This is Mike Adams of Brighteon.com and Brighteon.tv, and today we have a very important interview, first-time guest, but someone that I think many of you are very familiar with, and I think his voice is critical for our time. His name is Scott Ritter. That's right, the Scott Ritter, former UN weapons inspector, United States Marine Corps officer, and now an author, an analyst, and he has been making waves with his commentary and analysis, and also a few enemies along the way, which we'll get to, but he joins us now to cover the latest news about Russia, Ukraine, NATO, Nord Stream, and the U.S. State Department. Mr. Scott Ritter, sir, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you on.
Well, thank you very much. The privilege is all mine. Thanks for having me.
Well, we really honor what you're doing and your presence here and your courage. And I don't say this often, but I'm actually a fan of your current work. I listen to a lot of your interviews and videos. And so, and people say this to me sometimes, but I may know you more than you know me, because I hear about, your passion for football and things you do in the off hours and your dogs and so on. So just thank you for being the real deal, for being authentic in what you do. We appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much. You don't get any more real than this. I'm a little disheveled, unshaven, but it is what it is. This is what happens when you're a citizen activist and you're not backed by corporate media or anything like that. So thank you again for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, let's just start with the big picture, if we could, because you have been, I think many people would characterize you as a dissenting voice against, of course, the establishment narrative, which we all know is just an incredible tapestry of fiction weaving by the State Department. But if someone were walking in new to this conversation, like what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and what happened to Nord Stream, how would you summarize where we are right now, if you could?
A quick summary would be that the United States, since 1992, has treated Russia as a defeated enemy. Of course, Russia being the successor state to the Soviet Union. And we have sought to keep them down. We succeeded in doing that for 10 years under Boris Yeltsin. A new president came in, Vladimir Putin, who wasn't going to play that game. And we've been trying to get rid of Putin ever since. And we do that by trying to destabilize Russia. And one of the key aspects of destabilizing Russia was to expand NATO to Russia's border, to include stripping away Ukraine from a Russian sphere of influence, knowing that this would provoke a confrontation with Russia. Now we have the fight. It's a fight we thought we could win by sanctioning Russia, bringing about the economic destruction of Russia, and therefore creating the conditions for the people of Russia to rise up and remove Putin from power. We miscalculated. The Russians actually flipped the script. Their economy is doing well and getting better. Europe's economy, on the other hand, isn't doing well. And the last time I went to the supermarket and looked at energy prices, we got some issues too. There's also a shooting war on the ground. We've turned what was a Russian-Ukrainian regional conflict into a existential battle of survival between Russia and the collective West, the United States, NATO, and some non-NATO European countries who are using Ukraine as a proxy to fight Russia. And surprise, surprise, we're not doing well in that either. It's a year into the conflict. And the fact is the Russians have mobilized successfully. They have positioned their military on the battlefield in a manner which will lead to victory over Ukraine, a Ukraine that has been propped up by the United States taxpayer dollar and by NATO weaponry. In brief, people say, well, how could you be so confident? What I'll say is this. This war is very complex, but by and large, it's a war that's defined by field artillery. That's the number one killer of people. And the side that has the most guns, that can fire the most shells in the most accurate manner, is going to be the side that's going to win. Russia is that side. But more importantly, the Ukrainians, who received a tremendous amount of artillery support from the United States and NATO, they're running out of ammunition, and they will run out of ammunition this summer. And because they've depleted NATO stocks, there's nothing left to give them. And we don't have a mobilized defense industry to build or produce new ammunition. So they're done. This summer, if they don't find additional resources to provide ammunition, when the guns stop firing, the war is over. And the Ukrainian guns look like they're going to stop firing, and the Russian guns will never stop firing.
Okay, we've got so many issues from what you just said there. I took a few notes, but let me just get this out of the way at the front. Is it fair to characterize your position as essentially anti-war in the sense that you don't want people to die, you don't want conflict, you want a negotiated peace of some kind? Is that a fair characterization?
I would modify it as such. First of all, I'm a Marine. War is my business.
Right.
So if you want a war, I'll give you a war. If you want to die, I'll kill you. I have no problem with this. So I'm not anti-war.
Okay.
I did a tweet. It got me in a lot of trouble, but it roughly encapsulates my position. What I said is, I'm a dog owner and I love dogs, and I would never want to bring harm to dogs. If I find a stray dog, I'm going to take it in. I'm going to take it to a shelter. I'm going to care for it. But if there's a rabid dog in the street, it needs to be shot. And we need Atticus Finch, who is the lawyer from To Kill a Mockingbird, the World War I veteran sharpshooter who came out and shot a rabid dog in the streets. And that's my position. And I view Ukraine as a rabid dog, and I view Russia as Atticus Finch. So even though I'm anti-war and I would prefer a negotiated settlement, let's never forget that the Ukrainian government has embraced the ideology of Stepan Bandera, a ultra-nationalist who fought alongside Adolf Hitler's Third Reich, has the blood of tens of thousands of Jews on his hands, hundreds of thousands of Poles, hundreds of thousands of Russians, and he is the national hero of Volodymyr Zelensky's Ukraine today. My uncle fought in World War II. I have other relatives that fought in World War II. They fought against the Nazi threat. And so I'm not going to sit by and pretend that there's some sort of equilibrium between the Russians and the Ukrainians today in Ukraine. This is actually a war between good and evil is defined by the odious neo-Nazi ideology of the Zelensky government. And while I don't agree with everything Russia does on this side, they're on the right side of history. So I can't say I'm anti-war. What I am is, I would prefer that a peaceful solution could be found to these problems. I would have preferred that war didn't break out. But a rabid dog is running in the streets, and I'd prefer he didn't have rabies. But now that he does, he needs to be put down.